One. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you so much for tuning into this brand new interview. As of course, you already know who I am, Sock Monkey Mike. I have a very special guest with me today. You may recognize her from So Random and Sonny with a Chance, known as Zora Lancaster. You might recognize her from the current season of AP Bio, which is a very, very great series indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, filmmaker, actress, the one and only Allisyn Snyder.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so this was actually cool because like I had emailed her like I want to say a day or two ago, and I'm like, I got to interview her. This is like a childhood hero kind of of mine. So you know, watching you growing up on Sonny with a Chance, So Random, and of course on AP Bio, and of course your filmmaking background as well as a filmmaker myself. It's cool to kind of get pick your brain a little bit and have this conversation.
Oh, so cool! I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course. So before we get everything started, I'd like to do a spitball or fireball question really quick. So the spitball or fireball question is the most I can't speak today. The most controversial question of all time. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Oh, weird thing is that I've been asked this in interviews before. It's like everybody wants to know this. Okay, so a lot of people might hate me for this, but I vote pineapple on pizza, but I also believe that you shouldn't put your opinions and views on other people. And I found that the pineapple on pizzas, like people are typically oppressed because it's like I've had parties before where like I'll be taking pizza orders from everybody and I'll tell them, I'll be like, hey, I'm getting pineapple. And they're like, I'll take pineapple. And we'll outnumber everybody. Like there will be like 8 people who want pineapple and like 4 people who are like, pineapple's disgusting. And I'm like, you're outnumbered, right? Like these people were all just too nervous to say it until I pointed it out. And then we were all like, yeah, you know what? Pineapple on pizza. We're not even getting cheese.
I mean, hey, people have their preferences, of course. When I think of pineapple on pizza, I'm thinking the whole, like, I'm going to eat the entire pizza. Although this is a personal preference, I'm not a huge fan of the ham. That's just me. I'm not a huge ham.
I'm vegetarian, so that doesn't even apply, but yes.
Yeah. So once again, thank you for coming on. I do appreciate that. So let's start off with your beginnings. You said in interviews before that what your main influence on your acting career has always been Saturday Night Live, whether that's from Chris Farley to all the legends that have been on SNL in the past. Was there any in particular moment from SNL that kind of said, hey, I want to do this for the rest of my life? Or, hey, I think this is pretty cool?
Yeah, I mean, I had been acting since way before that. That definitely was something that really shaped a lot of my character choices during So Random, because that was kind of right around the age when I started watching a lot more Saturday Night Live, is like doing Zora. And then when we changed over from Sonny with a Chance to So Random, since it was like a show within a show, and then it was just the sketch show, that was something that like my dad was like, ooh, this character reminds me of this, and so we would watch a bunch of SNL. And the big thing that I loved about it was just these comedians who just were not holding back. It's like they would be written as these ridiculous crazy characters, some things that people might feel a little too vulnerable to play, or they're like, oh, I don't want to look stupid or silly on live TV. But it's like my dad always had a saying, because he would come to set with me since I was a minor, and so we would work on all the lines together, and before any sort of rehearsal or filming or anything, he would always tell me to bring it. And so it was just kind of like this little reminder of like, hey, if you don't give it your all, nobody will ever know what you're capable of.
That's awesome. I mean, you could tell, especially from an early age as well, you've had the passion for this business. You've had a passion for acting, filmmaking, and stuff like that. Can you talk about like how that passion really started? Was it through something that you saw early on, or was it kind of like, you know what, I love this, I'm going to keep going?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a storyteller. And so it's like through and through everything that I've done, it's always because I love to just tell stories. And like, so everything, writing and even like painting, I feel like everything I do is just like I've got these ideas in my head, and it's just about how I kind of put that out there to the world, try to share those ideas. So I'm not necessarily one of the actors who's like, oh, I see the glamour of Hollywood and I want to be famous and walk the red carpet. Like, it's never even been about that for me. It's always just been like, I want to, be these characters and tell these stories. And, when I get a script that I love, it's like whether I'm in front of the camera or behind the camera, it's just about like sharing these stories with people.
Yeah, and the storytelling that you have, whether that's through So Random, again, Sonny with the Chance, or even stuff like AP Bio or some of the films that you have made in the past, it's always great to have that certain pattern of telling that story. And that story is different every single time. So I always find that unique when I meet some people, especially in the filmmaking industry, or whether that's just filmmaking students in general, that's like, okay, so you want to make a, a parody of SNL, like, that's cool. Like, how are you going to make it different than anybody else's? And then when they tell me that story, show me that script, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I definitely have been, you know, filmmaking since a very, very early age, just with a, you know, little flip camera at home since, you know, 5 years old. It's like my friends would come over to my house in elementary school, and instead of it being like a normal sleepover where it's like, you bring the Oreos and like I'll bring 13 going on 30, it was like, what wardrobe should I bring? Do you have a script yet? Like I would hand out scripts at school and I'd be like, okay, have this prepared by Saturday, and like here's the song track, here's the reference, here's the instrumental. And it's like, that was just what my childhood was, is my dad and I like writing scripts furiously and then putting them together in little stupid productions over the weekend.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I remember myself when I was growing up as well. The first ever thing I ever made a movie on, and I remember this through heart, was it was a slideshow on Microsoft Movie, or not Microsoft, excuse me, Windows Movie Maker, and it was just a bunch of pictures and my narration of like, and here comes Rhinus the Turtle. That's what I first named my first character, and it was just so weird dialogue. It was so weird storyline, but it made it work back in the early 2000s. So.
Yep. Yeah. I know. I've definitely, because when I started, you know, taking everything a lot more seriously and, you know, attending cinematography classes, and then I started putting out like what I consider my first short films, people would tell me like, wow, like my first work wasn't that great. And I was like, well, technically it wasn't exactly my first work. I'm like, not going to show you the stuff from when I was 8, but right. Yes, let's just say that my first work is great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then now, you know, of course you have so much from the beginnings of your career, whether that's through your art or whether that's through your early stages of filmmaking. And then of course, you know, for everybody that's around our age of like that childhood nostalgia of like, man, I remember watching Disney Channel and watching So Random and stuff like that. Can you talk to us about what it was like going into the industry at first?
Yeah, I mean, when I very first started acting at 4 years old, I had no idea what I was getting into, and neither did my parents. Like, my parents are not actors or anything, so they had no idea really what the industry was. My dad's a musician, but that was like as, you know, creative as our household was. He's like a musician, artist, and so basically they would take me to a lot of plays when I was 4, and they saw that I like really, like, I would get so enthralled in these stories, and I loved meeting the cast afterward, and like in the middle of the plays I would try to like get up on stage with them or like be a part of it or like shout things to that, like just be involved in the scene. And they were like, okay, we don't want to discourage this outgoing behavior because we think that's great, but we should also take it somewhere where it's more appropriate. So then they took me to an acting class, and so my first acting class that I attended, there was a substitute teacher there named Lix, and she's still my manager to this day. And so it's like she asked if she could start sending me out on auditions, and my parents again had no idea what that meant, and they were like, yeah, sure, we can drive her to Santa Monica or pick up early from school, take her to an audition. And it just picked up really fast. Like I just started, you know, I got, I think, a call back on my first like film audition, and I booked a commercial pretty quickly, and it got to the point where it sped up so fast that my dad ended up quitting his job so that he could be with me full time and take me around to auditions. And it was just kind of like, you know, an after school activity for me. Like it didn't feel like, oh, I'm an actor and like, you know, we're going to go out to Los Angeles for pilot season. It's like I already lived out here. So it's like my family didn't have to like, you know, move anywhere. It wasn't like, okay, we've got a limited time to make this work. It was just kind of like my friends did soccer and I did acting. And it was just like, I called all the casting directors teachers. And also my dad could never get me to wear shoes into auditions. I was just like always barefoot, like hair a mess. Like he would try to get me to brush my hair and I'd be like, no, I'll just wind it. And I would like run back and forth. He's like, that doesn't, what? Like, what cartoon are you watching that they do that? And then I was booking things and he was like, you know what? Never mind. It's working. Whatever you're doing. I guess they love like the natural look. It's like I would go into these waiting rooms with all these other girls who were like in little matching like Old Navy jumpers and like perfectly braided hair with their berets. And it's just like, I was just a mess, like shirt, all the buttons were wrong and like just stains on it. And I was like, oh, I'm like a real kid. And I think that that was like refreshing for them to see somebody who like went in there, like there was no pressure on it whatsoever. Like my parents never pressured me. My dad also did a really good job of making sure that I didn't feel overworked at any point. So it's like, let's say one of my classmates was having a Chuck E. Cheese birthday party or something, and then I got a callback for a commercial that would shoot on that same day. He'd be like, you know what, like we're not going to go on this because if he books it, like she wants to go to the Chuck E. Cheese party, which, you know, I hear that now and I'm like, oh man, that could have been like another car payment, and that could have been another couple years of Invisalign and like all the things that it could have paid for. But my dad's like, you know what, you wouldn't have stuck around. You wouldn't have kept doing it if you felt overworked as a kid.
Yeah, that's awesome. But, I mean, of course, like there's you know, which one would you rather choose? Would you rather choose the money or would you rather choose the cheeseburger? Of course, there's decisions, but I mean, like my grandfather always said, you make the best decision you can with the stuff you have at the time. And you know, what you made, I think was pretty good, especially with
yeah, no, I think that it was all the right calls, and it's like I've tried to keep that throughout my adult like acting career as well. But it's like, you know, when I got the Disney show, it was exciting. It's like we didn't actually have normal television, so I didn't watch the Disney Channel or like just television in general. We were all just like, we would watch movies. That was when Blockbuster was still a thing, and so we would just like walk across the street to a little Blockbuster and rent movies. So I remember my friends being a lot more excited that I was on the Disney Channel than I was. I was like, oh, this is cool, but it was just like another job to me. I was like, yeah, this is gonna be great. I knew that they did the wand thing, and that was the first question I think I asked my agent. I was like, oh, do I get to do the wand thing? He was like, I don't know, probably. Like, hello, you just got a series regular job on a Disney show. And I was like, yeah, cool, thanks. What about the wand thing though? Let me know. But yeah, I definitely like, I kept this kind of casualness, I think, and, you know, always treated it like it was something, you know, fun, and it was a part of my life that like, it wasn't like the main focus of like, oh my gosh, I have to get this job, or like, this is my dream job, and like, if I don't get this one, I'm going to be crushed. It was just kind of like, oh, like you go on a million auditions, you get a couple callbacks, and you book one job. So it's like, there was never that pressure on it. And it's like, I've tried to keep that when I'm auditioning for things now. It's like, you know, not having that pressure of like, oh, when is the next paycheck going to come in? It's like, I try to have other sources of income and like selling my art online. That way it's like, you know, if I book something, then it's great, but it's not like, oh, I need this in order to survive.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, you know, especially like you mentioned before about like, oh, it's just another audition gig where your friends are like, man, I'm on, like, do you see her? She's on Disney Channel. Like, that's awesome. I mean, I remember going to one of the tapings a while back. I don't remember if it was Sonny with the Chance or Shake It Up. I'm not too sure. But okay. I just remember I was just sitting there with my best friend at the time. I mean, we're still best friends. Don't get that twisted. But we were just sitting there in the front row, and I was about, let's see, for a 12-year-old kid, I was about 280. I was pretty up there, and I was in the front row with a white shirt, and I was brought to the back by one of the directors, and he was like, son, you see your white shirt's taking up most of the brightness over here. And then so I was in the back, and I think I got to meet, oh my goodness, I think I got to meet somebody. I do not remember the name at that point, but I think it was Sonny with the Chance taping, I believe. But it was cool. It was definitely cool.
That's very cool. That would make sense if it was a Sonny with a Chance taping, because we would film the audience as well. So if they were moving you because of the white shirt.
I mean, yeah. I mean, but hey, again, it is what it is, especially during those times of the good old days of the early 2010s. But anyways, so like we mentioned before, you know, you've had this great path of success early on as well, you know, especially with Sonny with the Chance, so Random, and then of course with AP Bio now. What was the reaction to when you first got into Sonny with the Chance, meeting people like Demi Lovato and all the cast over there and the crew?
Yeah, I mean, that was when Demi, she had been doing, is it called As the Bell Rings? But again, it's like I didn't have Disney Channel because it was like that little interstitial show that she would do. But I mean, Sonny with a Chance was really where she got big. So it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm working with Demi Lovato. It was like she was just another cast member. And again, it's like, I think that growing up in Los Angeles, it's like you're always meeting people who are in the industry. It's like, you know, you're at Starbucks and Matthew Perry walks in. Like, it's not like it's not abnormal here to like see people that have been on TV or, you know, have successful careers. So I've never really felt that like just crazy starstruck, oh my gosh, I'm meeting this person kind of thing. It's like I definitely have people that I admire and I get excited to meet them, but it's a little bit more like, oh my gosh, I love your work, like that inspired me to do this, like thank you so much for everything you do. But yeah, I mean, meeting all the cast and getting to work on that was, again, it was like just another job, but it was like really, really fun. And I think that it really hit when I started getting recognized. Like once the show started airing, I think I kind of realized how big of a deal it was, because I had gotten recognized before in like grocery stores for different commercials that I'd done. Like I was in a Got Milk commercial as a child that aired like just consistently, and people would recognize me for that. But I think Sonny of the Chance was the first one where, because Disney would have these meetings for like safety, and so they had the parents and the kids come in. It was right around the time of was it Zeke and Luther? So Ryan Newman was there, and then there was like Good Luck Charlie, and so Bradley was there, and we were in this meeting basically talking about like, hey, you come into these people's living rooms every single week and they feel like you're their friend, and so there's this kind of like interesting relationship that they think that they have with you. And it was kind of talking about like the possibility of stalkers and like super fans and like maybe not accepting gifts, because then it creates a little bit more of a relationship, or it's like, you know, filtering out weirder fan mail and things like that. And it's like that kind of started to put into my head of like, oh, millions of people are watching this. This is like a little bit bigger than I thought it was. And then like, you know, I'd be walking through Target and like a little like 8-year-old kid would run up and bear hug me and be like, Zora, Zora. I'm like, whoa, hello. Allisyn, nice to meet you.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome, especially, you know, knowing those protocols and knowing those precautions beforehand is definitely something that's huge, especially in the industry.
Yeah, that was a really interesting thing for us to get used to, and we definitely had to make a lot of life changes once things started to get weirder. You'd be surprised, some of the people, I guess you wouldn't be surprised, who watches Disney Channel and some of the weirdos out there. It was, boy.
I don't know. All I know is that I remember, like I mentioned before, I think they were doing a meet and greet. I think it was one of those. And I had met, no, take the back. It was for Ant Farm. And it was, I had met China Ann McClain, and then her reaction to about maybe 5'11", 12, 13-year-old kid, maybe roughly around like 280 at the time. And she was like, whoa. I didn't know you watched the show. So, I mean, there's what's great about what, you know, during that time is that it brought a lot of people, you know, different, you know, shapes, sizes, looks, and everything together. And that's what I thought was very special, especially with stuff like So Random and Sonny with a Chance.
Yeah, So Random was a really interesting one, because we transitioned from Sonny with a Chance, where it's like I would mainly get recognized by like younger kids, and like, you know, it was mainly like girls between the ages of like 8 and 12. And then all of a sudden So Random came out, and they also kept bumping our time slot later and later. So we almost became like Disney's late night show, because a lot of our jokes were a little edgier, and it's like sketch comedy is all about making fun of things, but it's like Disney doesn't want to make fun of things. It was kind of a weird thing for the channel to be trying out. And I remember like I would go out in public at the mall or something, and adults would recognize me. And they were cool about it, but they were just like, are you that chick from that like sketch show? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, I remember I was watching that. I was flipping channel, like, this is funny. And then I knew a commercial, and I was like, this is Disney Channel? And so it's like people confused, like didn't realize that it was like the Disney Channel. They were just like, this is wacky and fun. And then they were like, oh, wait, why is Disney doing this?
That's awesome. I mean, like I mentioned before, you know, it's cool seeing all these people, just not just kids, but also adults, like recognizing you and stuff like that. You know, and of course, you know, now it's more towards the AP bio standpoint now. So can you talk to us about where the idea of Heather came from and how that feel was for that show?
Yeah, I mean, so when I first got the audition for it, it was just the Untitled Mike O'Brien project. So had no idea what it was. They literally sent me one page of the script. So like I had no idea what the show was about or what was going on. It was just the page with my catfish monologue. So it was just like, hey boy, you're smooth like butter dripping off chocolate. And I was like, that was my only line in the pilot. And that was my only line for auditioning. And I just remember getting that audition and being like, well, this is easy and strange, and I have no idea what I'm getting into, but okay, let's try this. And I also didn't think I was going to book it, because I what old was I at that time? Like 21, 22. And I was like, oh, I'm way too old for this. Like they're trying to audition high schoolers. And so I went in for it, and I have my kind of, you know, section of my closet that's for like when I'm auditioning for high schoolers. So it's like I tried to dress a little younger, and I like braided my hair. And it also said the only character description was just mousy and big glasses. And so I was like, okay. So like I wore a pair of my fake glasses. They didn't magnify my eyes like the ones on the show do it. They were just like big circle glasses. So I went into the waiting room, and I saw that all the other girls in the waiting room were like really, really charactery. A big thing in the industry is that like you kind of have to categorize yourself sometimes, because casting directors don't always have the greatest imagination, or sometimes like, you know, networks or whatever, it's like they're looking for somebody who like fits into this role picture. So it's like picture a bit more like, are you a cheerleader, or are you the nerd, or are you like the emo one? And it's like you kind of have to shape your whole like look off of that. It's like if you look just kind of really plain, or you're kind of like in between characters, it's like you might not necessarily like click in their head right off the bat of being like, oh yeah, that's our girl, that's definitely our cheerleader. So I've always kind of been in this weird in between place of like sometimes agency will out for leaders and sometimes they'll send me out for nerds. And so when I went on this audition, everybody else in the waiting room was very much like, you could tell that they were leaning into the charactery like nerd kind of thing, just with like their whole appearance and like the way their hair was cut and everything. And I was like, okay, they're definitely looking for people who are super charactery. So like I have to make some really distinct choices, or I'm not going to stand out against these people. And so it was like a split-second decision walking into the audition room, be like, to make that voice. And I did it the whole audition as well. So it's like introducing myself and like saying thank you and goodbye at the end. It's like I like wasn't really looking people in the eyes, and I was like just like the whole mousy thing and like the low voice and the awkward like mouth breathy thing. It's like I just did that the whole time. And it was funny because when I was talking with Mike O'Brien after I got the show, we were having lunch together, and he was like, I thought that you were just accidentally perfect for the character. He was like, I was so surprised to find out that you're like a normal person. Like finding out that that wasn't your real voice and you were like cool and casual was super weird. And so I think that they were definitely looking for people who were just naturally oddballs, which is like, I'm glad that I, even not knowing that, went into the audition still in character.
That's awesome. And once again, we had just got to season 3 or season 2 of AP.
Yeah, so we're season 3 is on NBC's Peacock. So it's like a streaming thing for NBC. I believe there's like a free version, and then there's like a paid version without ads, kind of like Hulu. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah. So season 3, more cursing, because now that we're on streaming instead of the channel. Mm-hmm. So there's some subtle differences. They're able to push the boundaries just a little more, even though Mike was already pushing the boundaries on the channel.
That's awesome. Well, make sure you guys go check that out. It just released this past Wednesday, so make sure you guys click the link below, because it will be in there. Trust me. I hope I remember that. and it will definitely be there to check it out. You know, it's been a great conversation thus far, but I do want to talk about something that people may or may not know, and it's about your art. Of course, I can see in the background some of your great art pieces in the back. What was the inspiration to creating your art and also having your own website?
Yeah, so my art has been something that I've done since early childhood. My dad, you know, to keep me entertained in the waiting rooms of auditions, would get me like these big packs of colored pencils and like those, like, I don't know if you remember those twisty crayons. So it was like really long crayon. Yeah. So it's like he would get me these huge packs of art supplies and like these big sketchbooks. That way, you know, when you're in this waiting room for a commercial audition for like 2 hours, it's like I was 5 years old, and it's like a lot of the other kids, it's like if they would start to get rowdy or like cranky or anything, a lot of the casting directors will have their assistants kind of watch the waiting room to see which kids are the most well behaved. Because it's like if they're trying to film something, it's like even if they're great on camera for like 5 minutes, then it's like if they're hard to work with or they get bored or tired throughout the day and then they don't want to do it anymore, that screws over the whole production. So it's like they look for the kids who are just quietly like doing a puzzle or drawing a picture. And so that definitely, I think, really helped me stand out against a lot of these other like screaming children. So it was kind of like, I think, a way to just sort of like keep me quiet and entertained at first. But like I said earlier, my dad is an artist. That was like one of his first jobs when he moved out to Los Angeles to pursue music. He was like a sign painter out here. And so it's just like, and that was also how he made money in high school. He would paint the backs of like leather jackets and stuff. And so it's like always something that I grew up in the house. We had like just a ridiculous amount of art supplies, but it was nice because it was something that I could like do alone by myself, because like I said, I loved, you know, getting all my friends together and like writing these scripts and doing these big productions, but it's like people weren't always able to come over. Sometimes like I would invite somebody over and they couldn't make it. They had, you know, something else going on. So it was like nice to be able to have something that I could do creatively without needing anybody else. So that's also kind of why I do it now as well. Like, you know, I love doing short films now. It's like I'm constantly writing projects, and like we'll go out and we'll film things with people. And, you know, sometimes it's like 3 a.m. and I want to create, and it's like nobody else is around, or like we're waiting. Like even if we have productions planned in the future, it's like I want to do something right now. So it's nice to be able to just kind of like sit down. I'll put on like a podcast or, you know, a playlist of music, and I can just kind of zone out and get creative.
Yeah, and I love how your art is kind of this escape from reality, because a lot of people, especially in today's time, need that kind of escape from reality. So especially with your drawings and kind of the art that you create is something that's very magnificent, to say the least.
Thank you. Yeah, it's funny calling it an escape from reality, because I definitely think that there's some truth to that, but I definitely think that my version of reality is very, like, I definitely have let like art and creativity really take over my life, to the point where it's like it's an escape from other projects. It's like, okay, when I've like hit a roadblock of like, you know, I'm not, you know, coming up with something, if I'm writing a project, or it's like, oh, I've got a shoot planned, but it's not here yet. It's kind of like my escape from other projects, like hitting certain roadblocks, or like I have to be patient with something else. So I'll kind of move over to all my art.
Well, that's awesome. You know, you talked about your productions and, you know, and all of your separate independent films as well. Can you talk about that transition from acting and being a part of all these films to directing your own independent projects and getting a crew together and doing all these productions?
At least I have always had such a fascination with behind the camera work. And like I said, I've been doing, you know, filmmaking since childhood. But the transition into like really taking it seriously was because of these family friends of ours, the Morrisons. And I had gone out to Maryland I was 16 years old, and it was during Hurricane Sandy, and I was there to speak at a charity event, and we ended up our flight back got canceled because of Hurricane Sandy. And so my dad and I were stuck out there in Maryland, and we ended up, because at first we were in a hotel, and then we ended up staying with the event host, and the Morrisons were the neighbors of the event coordinator. And so we just started like chatting with them, and they were the ones who were like helping drive us back and forth between like the event and the house. And they were kind of like, we called them like our parallel universe family. Like our parents had gotten married in the same year, one day apart. So they have like practically the same anniversary. And like, I was the exact same age as their oldest son, Brian. And my sister was the exact same age as his younger sister, Kendall. And like both of them did like ice skating at the time. And like both Brian and I were super into like zombies and filmmaking and like horror and blood and guts. And like, we just all liked the same things. And we had so many like overlapping personality traits. And so, you know, Brian was showing me a bunch of his like little films that he would make around with his friends. And I was showing him my stuff. And so we like really clicked, and we were there in the Morrison's house, and we were like, let's make a movie together one day. And Brian's father, Bob Morrison, overheard that and like made sure we kept in touch. And he was like, yeah, let's make sure that these two make a movie one day. And so Brian then started going to film school. I graduated at 15, and so I started taking like just cinematography classes at like a local community college. Yeah, college was a really interesting experience for me because I didn't do it for the reasons that other people do it, of like, you know, getting that piece of paper that said you took those classes. I've always seen, you know, in this industry, it's more about what you can make and what you can show for yourself, like portfolio wise, as opposed to like having a piece of paper that says, I know how to make film. It's like, great, show me one of your films. And so I kind of use the cinematography classes as this way of, because the course was really, really, really affordable, but you had access to like Black Magics and Reds and like these full on like state of the art like Mac like editing labs, and it was just like all these programs, and it was like for a couple $100 to take this course, I all of a sudden had all this like at my fingertips, and so that like made it more than worth it. And it was just nice having the professors there to like, you know, help you with any, you know, technical difficulties or issues you had, and like the critiquing, and I absolutely loved that. And so I took some like cinematography classes, and then Brian started going to film school, and Bob messaged me on Facebook. He was like, hey, are you guys still interested in making a movie together? And I think in Bob's head, he was picturing like feature film, like I'll fly Brian out there and we'll do a feature film together. But of course, you know, growing up and being on many, many different independent film sets that have just gone completely awry because of lack of experience and lack of budget, I was like, let's start really, really, really small. And so the first short film that we did together actually is not online anywhere yet, and it probably will go online soon. So make sure you're following at Watch the Footage. That's our little like production company, which of course abbreviates down to WTF. But yeah, so we're Watch the Footage, and we did this little short film called Strangers, and it was something that I tried to write that was just like really, really simple, of like, it was just this couple that was on a date and they wwere people watching. And so I was like, great, this is something easy that we can tackle. We can shoot it in 2 days. And of course, once we actually got on set for film, it was interesting because it was the first project where we were kind of taking it a little bit more seriously, of like setting up lighting and like getting people to fill out SAG paperwork. And it was the first time we had ever like held auditions. So it wasn't just me casting my friends from elementary school. It was like, okay, let's like, you know, put out a casting call on like Now Casting and Actors Access. And so it was like really interesting, kind of like stepping up a little bit of like, we all knew what we were doing in terms of like, you know, making our little home movies, but, you know, we had allotted ourselves, I think, like 2 hours to film like at a liquor store that we got for like really cheap because it was a friend. And 2 hours ended up like not even being close to enough time, because it's like by the time we got everybody like signed in and paperwork and everything and picked out wardrobe, it was like we'd already eaten up an hour of our time. And so it was like a really interesting experience to be like, okay, we're not making home movies anymore. We need to like take this a little more seriously, or like at least plan accordingly. And so that was like a huge learning experience for us. And then after we finished that, because Brian, of course, he was going to film school in North Carolina. And then when we had it all edited and ready to go, it was like, hey, let's have like a little mini screening for it. And Bob was like, great, if I fly Brian out for a screening, do you guys want to shoot another one? And so it just kind of became this little cycle of like, Brian would come out, we would have usually a screening for our previous project, and then we would shoot another film. And they got a little bit bigger every time. And so we did, after Strangers, we did a project that is online. It's called Ouija, spelled Weeji, and it's like a demon that they're communicating with that can't spell. It's a fun little project. That one we shot all in one location because it was just like a basement setup, because I was like, the other one we had to go from like a liquor store to then filming outside, which is just like terrible for noise, and like trying to get permits for filming and everything is just chaos. And then we had like a house location too. And so for this one we were like, let's just film everything in one location. Let's have minimal cast, like no background actors, and just like it was definitely like cool, and it went really well. And there was of course its own complications and stressful situations, but I felt like we really grew a lot in those two projects, and even more so with the next one. And it's like we kept learning things every time we would hit a roadblock. It like taught us something to look out for the next one. So and then one also on called It Just a Story, and that one's about these girls at a summer camp in the 70s. Like the making of a ghost story. So that one's online with, we started getting distribution with Fun Size Horror.
Okay.
So it's actually, those projects are also on Amazon. You can look up Shocktail Party. It's like this little Amazon show with these puppets that kind of like narrate the whole thing, and they like they talk in between each short film. And so we were guests on there. I believe we're episode 7, but it was like they featured us for an episode. So it was like Watch the Footage. It showed like all our different shorts, and we were there to kind of talk about like the progression from each one. And we did Nasty Habits was another one as well, and that one was out in the desert, and it was like the first time that we were shooting in a moving vehicle. And that was also when we upgraded our camera as well to like an actual like cinema camera, and which we found out overheats at like 103 and it was like 115 out there. So that had a whole that shoot, we always say, is proof of Murphy's Law. That was absolute chaos, but we got it done and we're really proud of it. And yeah, and so now we've done also since then this other project, Room 566, that's in festivals right now, and it's going really well, and we're super proud of that one. We made that one as sort of a concept piece for a feature that we want to do. So right now we're using, the festival success as well as just being able to show that to potential investors. And so we're gearing up for our first feature, which is super exciting. Between every project, Bob would ask, he's like, okay, so now the next one's a feature. And we're like, no, Bob, we still have, things to learn. We're still expanding our crew. We're still doing this with 4 people. And so it would go from like a 3-person crew to like a 4-person crew to now, okay, we have 6 people. We're a crew now. And so it's like, we kept like growing everything until the last production. We were like, okay, we really feel like we got our flow. We got everything figured out. Everybody knows like what roles they kind of are on set. And it's like, okay, Bob, we're ready for a feature.
That's awesome. And especially coming from a student filmmaker as well. I mean, I love the idea of a production. I mean, unfortunately, we were in the process of making a production before all this had hit. And then but it was during that small little time that we had from January all the way till, I believe it was March 10th. That was when everything went downhill. But, it was just kind of the value of having a production team and having not just a production team, but a production team filled with your friends that are supporting you and are like, so Mike, you don't know how to be behind the camera? Well, let me show you how to do it. Or, it's awesome having not just a production team, but a huge support system with you.
Yeah, I think our big thing was like we found, this little group that like we all loved storytelling. And so it was less about like, I want to be a director. It was a little bit more of just like, I want to be a part of this. And so it gave us this nice opportunity to like, we all wear many different hats and we all kind of like traded off positions as our short films went on. That way we could sort of try out different things. And even my husband, Dylan, he had always been into photography and he had also like shadowed a lot of different people on Kicking It. And so it's like he definitely like saw himself one day pursuing something like directorial or cinematography. Like he just really didn't know exactly where he would fall into, and like he had never actually like applied himself or tried out any of his skills. But he had all the camera gear for photography, and then wouldn't you know, it also films as well. And so once we started kind of doing these short films, he started like testing out camera stuff a little bit more and experimenting and trying out stuff, and that really like developed his like just passion for camera work. And so because Brian was originally kind of like he was doing everything camera and everything post-production, Dylan was sort of the head of every single department, so he was doing all of like our lighting and costumes and props and just he was our entire grip team and just everything. He was doing everything. And then I was like writing and directing them. And then as we kind of like got more people on our crew and we all sort of found our passions, Brian would always say too that when he first went into film school, he was like, I want to do everything. And then he tried everything and he was like, never mind, I want to do these things. And so it kind of like kept narrowing down. And so he really fell into editing, was just like his passion and his love. And so he's still our entire post-production team, which we'll need to, I know, find people eventually to kind of take that load off of him. But he fell into editing, and then Dylan fell into he is a fantastic cinematographer, but he's also an incredible director as well, because he just like has the eye for that. And I definitely am very, very good at organizing everything and bringing everybody together. So I found that I really, really love like first AD work actually. And it was interesting because I was talking with some of the directors and first ADs on AP Bio, just kind of like picking people's brains, asking how they got started. And some of the directors were asking me if I was interested in direct on television shows, and I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, I also have this passion for first AD work. And they were like, why? They're like, you do first AD work to become a director. And I was like, I think that first AD to be like backbone of a production. It's like if you have a bad first AD, the whole thing falls apart. Like you have no hope. It's like I've seen so many productions where it's like I solely blame the first AD for things like going downhill. It's just like they are scheduling, they are coordination, they are communication, and it's like those are the 3 most important things on a set. It's like if you don't have good communication or coordination or scheduling, then like you can't shoot the project. So I definitely have found like this passion and this love for being kind of the one to communicate between all these different departments and make sure that everything's going smoothly.
Yeah, I think it's very important, and I'm very fascinated by your passion, by you know, just the work that you have done, and knowing that passion that you're putting into that story is absolutely amazing, to say the least. I mean, of course, excuse me, I'm kind of going more to the sports broadcasting field, but of course,
Cool.
as a filmmaker in general, it's awesome to really kind of share that passion, like you mentioned before, with all these other individuals, and just kind of put on that same hat and just say, okay, I want to be a part of this huge project, and I want to get everything put together. So I think that's absolutely incredible. Wow.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really fun, and especially when it's all your like friends and family. It's like my dad also does all of our audio work as well because he like does sound mixing and engineering, and like he's a composer because it's like, again, that's what he came out to Los Angeles for, was music, and so he composes all of the music for our projects, and like him and his bandmates, it's like some of them are like Grammy winning or Grammy nominated, so it's like the strings that he can pull to like get these people to play on our soundtracks is insane. And so it's like it kind of all just really came together of like, I've had definitely people approach us before, whether it's at film festivals or just kind of like through the internet, of being like, hey, I do this, like if you ever need somebody to do this. And I'm like, we kind of have all the positions filled, but I'll definitely like keep you in mind if for some reason they're not available. But it's just kind of like, I mean, my dad does everything audio wise, Brian does everything post-production wise, and then we've got this buddy Joey, who he not only does he do our web series with us, which that's a whole other thing, but then he's also an incredible cameraman, and so he does like all of our DP work now, and Dylan, you know, filled that director slot, and I write all our projects, and we're like, that's kind of all we need. It's like, you know, a couple extra hands on deck for just like, you know, assistant camera work and just like PAs and lighting and grip is like super helpful. But it's like all the main stuff, it's like we can just, you know, the couple of us go out and shoot a project and make something that we can be proud of.
That's awesome. And once again, you know, from this point on, I cannot wait to see what you put out next. My throat's going out. That's great. But, you know, other than that, I mean, thank you once again so much for being a part of this. It was great to have a conversation about you, not just about your filmmaking or acting career, but also just sharing passions. I mean, I think we could compare that both of us are very passionate of our separate entities and our separate industries of the broadcasting industry. But before we go, I do have one more question. This is kind of the most anticipated question, as they say. So,
is it olives on pizza or something? Or
no. So what it is, it does involve the broadcasting perspective. So what advice do you have to those, you know, broadcasts or those production companies or production teams that are independent that have to put their production on hold thanks to current circumstances? What's your advice towards them on maybe doing something else, maybe shoot stuff from home? Like, is there any good advice that you could have, especially during a time where we all have to stay at home?
Yeah, I mean, I was in a really good position. I mean, as good as it could have been when all of this hit. And obviously, you know, it's tragic and terrifying, and there's, you know, a lot of chaos right now. But I'm very thankful that it kind of hit at a good timing for us, of like, we were starting to gear up for the feature. So it's like we already had part of our budget secure. We started talking to actors, had this team assembled. We were teaming up with this production company called Bad Idea that does a lot of stuff with Netflix. They do like El Chapo. And so we already had a lot of good things set up, but we didn't have any of the dates confirmed yet. So we didn't have like deposits down on anything. And so it's like, it definitely pushed everything. And we're waiting to pull the trigger until everything's like safe to open back up again. But I'm thankful that, like, you know, we didn't lose anything. And it's like, we were going about it very responsibly, of making sure that, like, even if we had dates locked down, we would have had production insurance for sure. And we would have had like a certain, you know, set of, you know, safety nets in place. So I think, you know, we've been tackling it where it's just kind of like, we're ready to pull the trigger as soon as things let back up again. It's like, we've got the New Mexico film office, like, ready to give us a call as soon as things are safe again and productions are opening back up again. We've got a location scout out there that's ready to set up meetings and viewings. I think that for us, it's just sort of that like over preparedness and like making sure that we're filmmaking responsibly really saved us. So I would definitely recommend, like, whenever you're doing any kind of production, just like making sure that you plan out all of the worst case scenarios and you've got you know, everything covered of like, you know, what happens, like, do you have a backup to call if your main camera person gets sick? It's like, are they bringing the entirety of the gear? Or it's like, if they get another job that actually pays them and you can't pay them, it's like, have backups for like your gear, have backups for, you know, your crew and your actors. It's like, I think that just that sort of over planning, it's like, regardless of what's going on in the world or going on in the lives of any of your teammates, it's like, if you can just be super prepared, then you can be hit with anything and you'll be okay.
Awesome. Well, once again, Allisyn, thank you so much for being a part of this interview. Hopefully we might have a round 2. Who knows?
Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much. If you don't already follow Allisyn, where can they find you on social media?
Oh boy, I have too many social media accounts because I have social media accounts for myself, and then I have social media accounts for my art, and then for my production company, and then for my web series. So you can find all of that linked. If you just go to Instagram and you go to Always Allisyn, my name is spelled weird. You'll see it down here. It's Allisyn. If you go to Always Allisyn on Instagram, I tried my best to link everything, but I'm on Etsy. It's The Art of Allisyn, or all of my art pages. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that, you know. And I've also got AllisynSnyder.com. You can find the links to all my stuff too. And so I'm out there. As long as you spell my name correctly, everything will pull up and you'll find me.
That's awesome. Well, once again, Allisyn, thank you so much. Now that you mention it, I actually accidentally, before this interview had started, typed in Allisyn by accident. But that no worries. The title of this interview, it's fixed. It's fixed. So
I've gotten some really weird ones. The weirdest one I got was I was at Starbucks and somebody spelled it Alicin. Like Alice, like the name Alice in. I think that they like heard Allisyn and they were like Alice in, like they just weren't thinking like, oh, Allisyn. And so that was definitely the strangest. So I don't think anything will beat that. But
awesome. Well, thank you so much. And for everybody, make sure you guys, you know, follow. I think she's pointing this way. Definitely make sure you check out her stuff. Check out AP Bio Season 3. I'm definitely excited to see that as well. And until we meet again, I will see you guys again soon.
Thank you.
Boom.